Good morning, guys. We are already skipping a couple pages to pages 194 and 195, dealing with quotation marks. Here's how this works now, my fine folks. You might see people do this, right? And I don't know if you ever noticed, but when they do this, they're quoting somebody. That's where the word quotation mark and a quote comes from, meaning they're telling you what somebody else said. That's what they're doing when they're doing this with their fingers. And the reason they're doing that, Mark, is because this is what the quotation marks look like. They look like apostrophes, and you always have two grouped together way up there. But what quotation marks do is they show when somebody is speaking. They completely surround the words that somebody says. The reason they do this is because we talked about this before. When you're writing out words, it's hard to have that picture in your head because you don't have a movie, you don't have visual. You have to imagine in your head. That's why we talked about how important adjectives are to describe stuff, right? If you talk about a car, you might have a black car in your mind, or this person might have a red car, or this person has maybe even a truck in mind. But if you describe it, the shiny, new, blue, small car, we all have that pictured in our head. Well, quotation marks can do the same thing because it gives our brain a signal exactly when somebody's talking. We know if we see these quotation marks, that means somebody's actually saying that. Notice how this works. Do you like this book? Ask the teacher. When you are saying something and I'm having a conversation with you, say, hey, how's your day go? Asked Mr. Poggle. Now, I don't say that, right? And you don't say, oh, my day went really well, said the student. You don't say that because we know when we're having a dialogue or a conversation that I'm talking and then you're talking. But when you're writing, you need to explain all that. And that's where quotation marks come into play. And then you can end it with asked the teacher. Another thing to notice is, look at this. This looks kind of funny to us because we say, hey, wait a second. We've been learning all year you end with punctuation, a question mark. Then you start it with a capital letter, the next sentence. This is still considered one sentence. Quotation marks kind of changes the rules a little bit because if you notice, again, think about this, picture this in your head, where a teacher is actually asking in real life, do you like this book? Now, when we're having that conversation, you know that the teacher's asking a question. But remember, this is all like in a book or with pen and paper, and so you don't have that movie or you don't have that real life experience. And so, the question mark just simply shows in writing that the teacher indeed asked a question. And then you continue with it outside the quotation mark so we know who's talking, ask the teacher. So even though this looks a little silly to us, it actually is correct. Did you like this book? And notice exactly what the teacher said is in quotation marks. Ask the teacher. That just kind of shows in writing who actually asked it. Tim replied, it was the best book ever. Now notice, the student here, of course, is Tim. Before you start exactly what he said, which is what the quotation marks show, exactly the words Tim said, you got to put a comma before that. That just, again, in the writing world is a way to show, hey, Tim replied, comma, now be ready, exactly what he say is coming, quotation marks, it was the best book ever, exclamation part, close quotation marks. I know this is throwing a lot at you. I know that. But I think once you start writing, when you get to the assignment, you're going to understand only the exact things that the person says is in quotation marks. And then you always got to show, ask the teacher. Or you can start it. Tim replied, comma, it was the best book ever, right? The quotation marks have to go around exactly what the person said. Now, here's the thing with quotation marks. If you notice, it's the exact same sentence, but it's written in three different ways because you could put The car is red, comma, he said. That's a very good sentence. Notice exactly what this boy said is in quotation marks and only what he said. He said, comma, the car is red. Now notice, when you start with what he said, you capitalize that section. Also, it could be on both sides. The car, comma, he said, is red. You can write all three ways, and all three ways are perfectly acceptable and correct as long as the quotation marks are only around what the boy said, and the comma goes before or after that, and it's kind of interrupted with he said, just so we understand who's actually talking. Now, when you have a comic book like this, you don't need quotation marks because why? Well, here we actually have the visual. See? We know that here John Arbuckle is talking. We know here that Garfield is talking or thinking, however you want to call it. So we don't need quotation marks because we have the visual. We can see it actually happening. You're not going to sit here and say, oh, this must be Odie talking. No, it's not. Right? The word bubble comes from John Arbuckle. Or the word bubble here comes from Garfield. It's when we're actually writing that quotation marks really come into play. And again, look at how this works. You were a little grave, comma, said Alice. Well, just then I was inventing a new way of getting over a gate. Would you like to hear it? Question mark, close quotations. Again, you're going to be able to see who exactly is talking because we have the knight here talking with Alice. But the quotation marks are only around what the people say. That's it. You were a little grave. Close quotation marks. That's this right here, what I mean by that. Said Alice. Notice the comma here. That's how you need to do it. And you don't put quotation marks again around said Alice because she didn't actually say that. That's just the writing to show who's saying it. Oh, open quotation marks. Very much indeed, comma, close quotation marks. Alice said politely. I'll tell you how I came to think of it, comma, said the knight. Okay, those are in quotation marks there, as you can see. Hey, guys, I know on ending this on a Friday, it seems really confusing, but I'll tell you what. This, you have 8 things to do. If you really look at page 194 and 195, I think it's really going to help. And what I'm going to really stress here, guys, is what they did to help you out. They underlined what should be in quotation marks. So as you see right here, I am so hungry, you need to rewrite this sentence and make sure quotation marks go around the underlined portion. But don't also forget Alberto exclaimed, comma, needs to be there. You got to have a comma before that when you do that. So that, my fine folks, is how you're going to be doing this throughout the assignment. And hey, you get all 8 done, rewriting the sentence, adding the quotation marks correctly. You're well on your way to a weekend. Have a wonderful day as you praise your Savior today and over the weekend.